Hello there, boys and girls. I just got back from the future. It was a fun trip, and while I was there, I did a few things. Obviously, I drove around in a flying car, saw the new iPhone 34, and finally got to ride a new generation Vekoma in America. And you know what? It was alright, but one thing I took away from this experience was that new Vekoma is coming to America, and it's coming to a park that you might not expect. As a quick refresher for everyone that may not know, in the 80s and 90s, Vekoma dominated the market with their torture machines known as SLCs and their boomerangs. And while they're not the worst coasters in the world, they do kind of suck. They're pretty bad. But recently, Vekoma has stepped up their game a bit. It started with Formula at Energylandia, and most recently has shown up with FLY at Phantasialand. We've also seen a lot more models come to fruition along the way. But there's one thing these coasters all have in common: location. All of these rides are in Europe, which in any other country would be fine, but us greedy Americans need everything that everyone else has. So for the past couple of years, coaster enthusiasts have been drooling over these models, just hoping, praying for one of them to finally come here. And guys, I think it's coming much sooner than you expected, and at a park you may not have expected to ever get another new coaster. That park is Six Flags St. Louis. Now I know this is kind of a random park, so hear me out. So far we've only seen two new generation Vekoma coasters in the US, and those are two family coasters at Dollywood and Fun Spot of all places. Now while those are two great family coasters, they're not an accurate representation to parks looking to buy a Vekoma of how a full-scale Vekoma would perform. I think the best real representation will actually be Tron Light Cycle Power Run at Magic Kingdom when that opens next year. That's going to be a launched motorbike coaster, and while it is a clone, it will undoubtedly be well received. Now I know Six Flags isn't dumb. What happens to Disney doesn't automatically translate to what will happen to Six Flags because they're completely different. However, if this is the only thing they can base their success off of for the new generation Vekomas, then the numbers will be in their favor. So obviously the only new generation Vekoma in North America will perform well, so Six Flags may be interested in getting one. But you might also ask, why would Six Flags want to work with Vekoma? Well, I think Six Flags is actually getting a little bored of the same manufacturers. Not bored in the sense that it isn't interesting for them anymore because, frankly, they don't care. No, bored in the sense that maybe their new coasters haven't been performing as well, or maybe they want to try something new. We've seen Six Flags begin to branch out and begin working with other companies with varying levels of success. So working with Vekoma might be right up their alley. You also have to take into account that Vekoma is under the same parent company as S&S, which is kind of in their tight circle of manufacturers they really work closely with. All this stacked up on top of each other really makes me believe that Six Flags will be the first buyer of one of these new generation Vekomas in America. But why St. Louis? St. Louis isn't exactly one of the most profitable parks, nor do they really take much pride in it, or at least I hope they don't, because they sure don't act like it. Well, that's exactly my point. We saw Six Flags take the same approach with New Texas Giant at Over Texas. At the time, Over Texas was one of their weaker parks, so they decided to throw it a bone with this new cheap conversion of one of their bad coasters with a company that wanted to prove themselves. And it was a hit. I don't think anyone expected New Texas Giant to explode into this RMC renaissance that we're in today, but it did. Now I think Six Flags will be more willing to try out new, or in this case an old manufacturer, but just at some of their smaller parks first to, test the waters. To me, St. Louis seems like the perfect park for that. It's the only major Six Flags park, at least with the Six Flags names attached to it, that lacks any major standout ride at all. All of their coasters range from meh to pretty good, but none are outstanding. I think a new generation Vekoma could be that outstanding coaster that they need. Look at their lineup of steel coasters right now. It's not very good. It's all clones, and the one original ride is a Vekoma, but an old Vekoma Aero monstrosity. Now, while a new Vekoma would probably be a clone, it would be original to the United States and have a completely different feel from anything in the park. None of these rides have ejector airtime quite like what's on these new Vekomas. And when I'm talking about these new Vekomas, I'm not really talking about their flyers. The FLY looks great, but I think a North American park would probably want to start out with something like a Space Warp or a Bermuda Blitz. I think Six Flags would probably go with a launch coaster though. I think the Space Warp would probably be the best bet for St. Louis. St. Louis needs another launch coaster. The only launch coaster they have is Mr. Freeze, and that's a reverse launch shuttle coaster. It's about as weird as it gets. So, a more traditional coaster like a Firestorm or a Space Warp isn't out of the question. I think a Space Warp is more likely because Mr. Freeze has an inverted top hat, and to the GP it would look pretty similar to the top hat on like any other Vekoma model, so they might want to stick with something lower to the ground. And the fact that this is the prototype for the chain also might want to make them go small. So when could it come? That's the question we've all been asking, and unfortunately, I'm not 100% sure. I do have a general time frame though. Pre-pandemic, I would have said as early as 2021 or 2022, but now I'm leaning towards 2023 to 2025. I know that sounds like a long time, but this pandemic really threw everything off. I think 2023 would be the earliest we would see any new coasters, so a prototype model for North America might need to cook in the oven for a little longer, so 2025 would probably be the latest. Also, you have to take into account when Toronto opens, because even though we know it's going to be a hit, if it has reliability issues, that might deter Six Flags away. Anyways, what do you think? I actually think I might be onto something for once, or I might just be delusional. So tell me in the comments what you think. As always, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in our spooky video next week. Bye, guys.